Welcome into the Thunder basketball universe presented by COOP Ale Works. The Thunder has concluded its 4-game homestand, ended on a high note with a win over the Houston Rockets. That's the second time that they've faced this team. Lost the first time, came back victorious on the second time. Today, we have a special guest with us today, and that is the one and only Royce Young. Royce, thanks for being with us again. I'm glad we haven't scared you off.
Yeah, super fun to be here, and thank you for coming back to us, Paris. Last time I had to do this with just Nick, and we got through it.
Talk about torture.
You guys did a great job. I listened to it. You guys held it down.
We missed you dearly, though, Paris.
Well, I'm glad to be back, and honestly, I think we have nothing. We should just jump straight into You Can Say That Again, because Royce is in on it this time. Yeah. He's got a stat line. He's got quotes ready to go. All right, Royce, you're the guest.
Okay,
we'll let you go first.
I got the honors. All right, so this quote that I'm going with, it came after a game in which Darius had 5 blocks, and the quote is, "Darius has all the tools to be a complete player in this league."
I think Shea said this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I remember this.
Is it a total you can Shea that again faux pas to use an actual Shea quote?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No, that's just leaning into the bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Makes it all that much better.
So I was kind of fired up to use this quote just because, for one, I think that Bazley has played really well over the last couple weeks. But even in a couple games where maybe he didn't play all that great, at least according to the box score, two big things kind of stick out to me about what Darius has done. One, his rebounding. I think that's been a big area of progression for him, and specifically, have you guys noticed late game rebounding?
Yep.
The Thunder don't have a lot of big guys, and it seems like it would be an obvious area of concern for this team to late game. Teams are crashing the boards. It's tense. It's really competitive, physical. And so, if you've got a 4-guard lineup or 3-guard lineup, it could become kind of a problem, those extra possessions. But to me, Darius has really stood out with his throwing his athleticism above the rim to go up and make some plays.
Yeah, I don't know if you can rebound the ball hard, but Darius Bazley does that. Yeah,
you absolutely can, especially in the NBA when you've got other guys who are trying to claw and get that rebound too. You've got to go up strong and go rebound hard.
There's something emphatic about the way that he grabs some of those boards, and he doesn't do it lackadaisically. He grabs them with 2 hands, he reels them in, and he secures them, and that's a huge sign. Just as you mentioned with the blocks, the rebounding as well. That's what Mark Daigneault and the coaching staff are looking for in terms of where is his energy at on a night-to-night basis?
Right.
Where what are we getting from Baze? And it's those 2 categories are really a marker of his activity.
Because I think you can look at a guy like him and look, you see how much talent Darius has. I mean, it's pretty obvious, and you can evaluate him based on the box score every single game. And for me, I think Bazley can become the type of impact player that goes beyond that, because I do think he can be really impactful in so many other ways. The other side that I wanted to point out that really kind of impressed me with him, and it came in a game where he didn't play all that well statistically, was against Miami. And later in that game, as the Thunder kind of tried to make a comeback, Darius's engagement on the defensive end really was noticeable to me, especially he was locked in on both Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. And the Thunder kind of switched up their defensive coverage just a little bit, and they were kind of trapping higher on some of those. And Darius's energy was obvious to me. He closed out and stopped what would have been open threes for both of those 2 guys, which, we all know what they can do. But Darius was so mentally locked in, I think, on his job right there. It was just really noticeable.
It's the concentration that he has shown just in terms of bringing the same energy every night and making sure that he has those foundational anchors to his game. He's had that really over his entire career, running the floor, rebounding, defending well. And now he's layering on kind of this added IQ and anticipation for going up and knowing when the ball's going to come off the rim. How many offensive rebounds has he just kind of swooped in and anticipated and gone in strong and hard and really, forced an extra possession for the Thunder? Those are sort of those little small plays that he's been able to kind of elevate his game in.
Yeah, I'll say one more thing, and then somebody else can have their turn. But I wanted to point out too that Mark Daigneault, I thought, had a great quote, kind of just talking about Darius's development and just kind of the organizational approach to a player like him. And I thought it was so smart to just kind of lay out, for people to understand, kind of there's I don't want to say method to the madness, but so to speak, that with a young player with as much raw talent as Darius has, that you don't want to come in and say all right, sit over there. That's your job.
Right.
Do that. And if you don't do that, then you're coming out of this game, and
right.
they kind of put them in a box to where They feel very constricted in their own development. And I thought that Mark really explained that to say, like, look, you kind of have to let them discover it on their own. And for a player like Darius, I think that you can see that light bulb that's flickering right now. And he's starting to kind of discover, oh, this is how I make an impact in an NBA game. And look, and sometimes you start with that and then it can incrementally build up and you do become the star player that you want to become. But it doesn't just necessarily, it's not like somebody just like flipped on the switch and boom, it was there from day one. Sometimes players have to, like Mark Daignault said, it's a kind of a journey of self-discovery to find their role and their impactability in the NBA.
And that's why if they had just decided he's a power forward no matter what,
right,
he's not defending Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero. And he's not
Good
getting
point,
to
Nick.
see whether that's an opportunity for him to learn how to chase guys around screens. I mean, guarding those two guys will help Darius Bazley guard Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
PG is a guy that runs around screens in very similar ways, except he's 6'8", 6'9".
Right.
Like those types of experiences, if the Thunder had put Darius in a box, he's not getting them.
That's a good point.
And it's so much more meaningful in terms of competence when you discover that yourself as a
Right.
player, that you have the ability to do those things like you're mentioning, Royce. All right, Gallo. You're
Okay.
up next.
This is a quote from last night after the Thunder beat the Houston Rockets 101-89. And this person said, "There's no egos between us."
I've heard this before,
I know this
but I think
one.
this has been said multiple times.
I know this one.
Oh.
It was me about you guys.
Yeah.
And just, this pod, there are
The
no
TBU
egos.
crew.
We're all just
hanging
trying
in
to
between
follow
us.
Nick's lead.
That's right.
Josh Giddey said that.
Josh Giddey did
Yep.
say that.
He
Yeah.
was talking about Shea. Specifically, I think but he was just talking about kind of the idea of, it's not like I want it. It's kind of just feeling out the game of like, this person's got it going. And I think he was kind of talking also about Lou and the game that Lou had going.
It just struck me like those were the three guys that were in double figures for the Thunder last night in that win. It was a low-scoring game. Shea and Josh didn't necessarily have it going like from a shooting standpoint,
Mhm.
but Lou was able to take advantage of the way that the defense was schemed up against Shea and Josh. And that's been happening over the last week or so. And this is why we've seen this explosion from Lou offensively. And the guys are okay with that. Like
Yeah.
they're okay with exploiting whatever the defense is throwing at them. And it's not necessarily, it's like the team is scoring, the ball is scoring. It's not necessarily like Shea's got to get his and Josh has to get his. So I just thought, stepping back a little bit, Lou's gotten a ton of pub lately,
Mhm.
and that's great. And like, it doesn't have to be anything otherwise. It's just whoever did well that night did well that night.
Yeah, there was one moment, I tweeted it out, that it was just so cool to me just to see. And this is one of the reasons I love the seats that we're afforded here in
Yeah.
Oklahoma City, because you can
Right.
really see these interactions so well. But, everybody kind of knows that Lou had a 20-point streak going. He was looking for his fifth straight in last night's game, and he had 18, and he got fouled, and he goes line. And I think Lou had just missed a shot at the rim, and he was, I don't know if, surely I bet Lou had a good idea of like, I'm close to getting that 20 again.
Uh-huh.
And so he goes to the line, and he has 2 free throws, needs to make them both to get to 20, and Lou misses them both. And the Thunder's next possession, like Lou kind of has the ball in the wing. It's kind of like a semi-transition moment, and he kind of puts the ball on the floor, kind of lost the dribble a little bit, and so he throws it back out to SGA to reset. And Shea, it was like Shea touched the ball for a millisecond. He throws it right back to Lou, and he just says, "Go to work."
Yeah.
And it was like
Mhm.
Shea was basically saying like, "Look, it was kind of like a quarterback going back to the receiver right after a drop." It's kind of what it felt like to me. It's like, no, I trust you. Go back and go get it. And Lou then put the ball on the floor, and he actually hit a little mid-range pull-up jumper, and he got his 20
Yeah, where did
points.
that
Yeah.
come from? First of all?
And
Haven't seen that.
the look on Shea's face was like, it was almost like an approving dad. He was like, I knew you could, and it was just, I thought it was just a great like floor general moment from Shea to just, it wasn't like this like huge bombastic leadership type thing, but it was just like, again, the connectivity that you
Right.
have with your teammates. I thought it was a cool moment.
And how many times has Lou brought up his teammates when he's been asked
Yeah.
about, this streak of 20 points that he's had, which is 5 games now, by the way, career-long streak. And he mentioned it last night, but, my coaches, my teammates, they believe in me.
Mhm.
And when you have that sort of belief from everybody around you as a player, that gives you so much confidence just to go out there and recognize that, I can go do this. And all the stuff the work that I've been putting in, we know Lou has attacked this offseason. We know that he worked really hard to get to where he is now to be able to turn this switch and finish the way that he's able to do. And that comes along with the confidence that he's getting from his teammates and his coaches.
Yeah, and as this team projects forward, like the offense is not anywhere close to elite right now, but in order to have an elite offense sometime down the line, you have to have at least 3 guys that can
Right.
be play starters, that can be playmakers, that can attack off the bounce. and beat their guy one-on-one. Lou Dort, when he came into the league, he had some of those things that he showed at Arizona State, but not to this level. Like the degree to which we're seeing him be able to be a third real deal scorer and playmaker is huge as you project out forward when you know that Shea's going to get better, that Josh is going to get better. And Lou, he's still so young. He's got room to improve too.
Well, and I think what we've also seen, and I'm sure we'll talk about Lou some more later too. Wink, wink. But, Mark has kind of talked about this as well, that you're seeing more teams scheme. Obviously, they're scheming SGA. And more teams are now doing it with Josh Giddey, which, was kind of specifically talking about the way the Miami Heat approached Giddey. Yeah. Really kind of trying to focus in on limiting his, drive and kick ability, his chances to get into the paint. And so I think that, not so coincidentally as that has happened, the doors have kind of opened up for Lou over this 5-game stretch.
Right.
And so, the more teams really kind of lean to look over at those two guys. That's exactly what you're saying, Nick. Like, that's why it can't just be one player that does it all.
Right.
Because opposing teams are really smart. They can scout that and they can scheme that. And so if you can diversify your options, especially in terms of shot creation, it really goes a long way in your offense.
Not to glean too much from the box score, but last night, Houston was able to kind of take away some of Shea's downhill scoring ability. They're kind of able to take away some of Josh's drive and kick stuff. Mm-hmm. Josh only had 2 assists, but Shea, in his own way, recognizing the way that he was being schemed and Josh was being schemed, picked up the slack with the assists. He had 9. And so it's not just in the scoring in terms of how those 3 can kind of all play off of one another and recognize how they're being schemed against. That is within the passing, with the rebounding, and all the other things that go into it.
Couldn't agree more. I love it. Okay, last one for You Can Say That Again. All right. I thought he did a nice job of kind of hitting the gas. I thought he's learning how teams are playing him. 2 parts of this one. Who said it? Who are they talking about?
That was from last night, wasn't it?
It was.
I think Mark Daignault said that.
That
sounds like a Mark Daignault thing.
When it's a Mark Daignault quote, you know it's a Mark Daignault quote.
Yeah.
If there's a euphemism or some sort of analogy,
right,
hitting the gas, if he's talking about things that aren't basketball.
I feel like he said it about Josh, didn't he?
He did. And I wanted to bring this one up because we were just talking about, that synergy between Lou, Josh, and Shea. And Josh hasn't really been able to use a Mark Daignault euphemism again, throw his fast pitch offensively over these past few games. And that's because teams are scheming him. Teams are watching film and they're preparing for him coming into the game. They're throwing different rotations and different schemes at him. And so he's had to kind of calibrate to that in real time and figure out how to go about, attacking that. And this past game, Coach pointed out that he did a really good job of, hitting the gas, kind of having a little bit of unpredictability to him in terms of not just going 1 speed or medium speed, but kind of stop and attacking, because the teams are kind of gapping him a little bit. And so Josh finished the game with a double-double, second double-double of his career, 14 points, 11 rebounds. And that was kind of a sign that he's starting to figure out how to attack some of these different coverages from teams.
Well, I thought it was pretty clear in the Miami game, Josh was a little bit indecisive with some of that. Miami threw a zone out for a lot of the game, as they do. Eric Spoelstra is very creative with the way that a lot of times they scheme opposing teams, but you could just tell that Giddey was kind of in 2 worlds at different points of trying to figure out, do I drive here? Do I pull back? Do I just swing the ball? And I thought it just kind of, the zone did what it was trying to do, is it made the Thunder offense stagnate a little bit.
Yeah. And then, 2 nights later, you could tell he was much more intentional about when he was going to try to get downhill. One thing that Josh does at a great level is in transition, he plays with pace and tempo. And we see that when he's got a full runway, he's really good at lulling and then going.
Right.
In the half court, that's a lot more difficult to do, to get that running head start. And a lot of teams in the NBA are frankly going to have more athletic players guarding Josh than how athletic Josh is. So he's got to figure out still how to beat these teams off the dribble, despite not having an athleticism edge.
Yeah, and it's not always about that. Take a player like Luka Doncic. He's not more athletic or faster or quicker than a lot of players that he's roasting all the time. But there is, like Paris said, there's a change of pace. There's the kind of herky jerky nature.
There's a cleverness to it.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought that was an area in the game against Miami. For one, it was pretty clear that I think the Thunder were trying to play fast. They just couldn't always necessarily generate it the way that they wanted to. But I did feel as I watched Josh play that game, that there were opportunities for him to be a little more aggressive off the dribble, and you kind of wanted to see him attack, and he would kind of make a first move, get cut off, and then just give it up.
Right.
And I think that there were times there where you want to see a little more assertiveness. And look, I think that's just, he's a 19-year-old rookie. I think those are types of things that he's going to figure out, of like, this angle is the way I make this play, or this move, or this counter move, or whatever it is. But that was a clear area of like development that I think that Josh is going to have to grow into.
And he's learning in real time. I keep bringing this up, but like every single game, these guys are going back and they're watching film. And especially with young players, I think Mark talked about this last night, but with young players, that rate of improvement and that rate of understanding and learning is happening so fast that you really can't put expectations on players at this early of a stage. And so with Josh, it's just really cool to see that happening in real time. He's learning from the past 2 games, and then the next 2 games, teams are going to scheme again. He's going to have to readjust. So there's going to be a lot of kind of like up and down. You're going to have to like try to look and see where that rate of improvement is going. But it happens super fast.
That's a great point.
The trajectory is really steep early on.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody just has a perspective that like, it's just, you're going to just kind of just track upwards. And everybody's repeated the phrase, progression is not linear, but it is true, Paris. What you're saying is that you can go back and you can learn it and you can know it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to apply to the following game.
Yeah.
So like, or at least the numbers may not reflect that improvement. There may have been improvement for somebody like Josh Giddey within that game, to where he kind of saw it, he understood it, he processed it, but he still went 2 of 10 shooting and turned the ball over 5 times. That doesn't necessarily mean that he got worse. It's just the stats didn't necessarily reflect the improvement.
Right.
And one more point I'll make on Josh was it wasn't just the offensive side, but it was the defensive side where we saw some improvement for him in that Houston game as well, because they tried to attack him. They tried to go right at him. There was a play, Jayshawn Tate just tried to go right at him, and Josh held his ground, chest to chest, bodied him up, and that's a play where it didn't necessarily result in a steal but that's not going to show up in a box score. But that's a sign of improvement.
How about that block shot coming across the lane?
That'll
was
show up
emphatic.
in a box score.
Yeah,
that did show up in the box score. That is absolutely true.
All right, shall we go into Name That Dude?
Please.
All right,
Am I up first? Okay.
Yeah, you're up first.
Okay, so it feels like a pretty easy guess here. My stat line is 25 points on 9 of 16 shooting and 3 of 8 from 3. So you just want to you just pull up numbers for the last 5 games. Try to pick which game that is. Who might have done that?
Potentially Lou Dort.
So, but here's the twist ending. Are you ready?
Yeah.
That's the average stat line of Lou Dort over the last 5 games.
I was about to say, I don't remember this exact
and full
stat
disclosure,
line.
I did round up. It was like 24.8 or something like that. But
that would have given it away.
I know, I couldn't say that.
Yeah.
But that is the average stat line of Lou Dort over the last 5 games.
That's crazy.
Well, it makes sense.
And he was one of the nominees for Western Conference Player of the Week, which is amazing.
Which was so funny to me the other night when Mark was talking about that. He kind of got asked that question, and he made a great point of like, it's not like that whoever's selecting that is necessarily looking at little things like, your weak side defense or
chasing around screens and like drawing offensive fouls.
I don't think that was like part of the criteria, but it is nice that Lou got recognized for the things that do get recognized in that, which is typically scoring stats.
And I think it just speaks to kind of what we were talking about earlier, is like Lou is emerging as a legitimate 2-way player in this league. And if you think about just like the course of Thunder history, having a guy that's that elite of a defender at the perimeter spot who is also providing an offensive punch, and one that's like, teams know Lou Dort is coming in and like a scorer in these games. He is a featured scorer for this team, and he's still producing. And so I think that's a big thing.
What do you guys see as like the biggest reason for that jump? Is it just the finishing at the rim having improved so dramatically?
I think that's a big aspect of it, because you look at this stat line. I mean, 3 from 8 for 3, and then 9 for 6 from the field. The finishes around the rim are there for Lou, because that was the shooting from 3 coming out of last season, especially. Teams knew that about Lou. They knew that he had that ability, and so there was an opportunity for Lou to use that shot fake or attack closeouts and get to the rim.
I think also just the shooting has evened out since the beginning of the season. Lou got off to a pretty terrible start shooting the ball from 3. Small sample size in the first 2 weeks, week and a half. And once that's flattened out, his numbers have just skyrocketed.
Right. And then plus, if you're doing a better job at, finishing at the rim, we all know that Lou Dort can get to the rim.
Right.
It's always just a matter of like paying it off there. And I think one of the things Lou has talked about is just kind of understanding his own physicality. at the NBA level, that you're going against big, strong guys that, you can kind of absorb that contact, but how do you finish through it? And I think Lewis had a few moments in the last week or two where you could really see him kind of absorb contact in the air and kind of like shrug it off as he finished through it. And it wasn't a foul. It's not like he's like finishing through a foul. It's just, good verticality from the other player, but Lou was able to finish through it, which I think is a huge step forward.
And just to follow up on the point you guys were making earlier about not progression not being linear, like even in this hot stretch, Mark Daigneault kind of pulled aside one of the Thunder assistant coaches, David Akinyoye, and just asked, like, in the Miami game, Lou was kind of not quite finishing the way that he had in the previous few games. He was going in a little bit too hard. He wasn't quite under control enough. And so just the awareness by the coaching staff, by the organization to recognize, like, yeah, progression is not linear. And we need to be careful about like what's happening on the backside here.
Right.
Absolutely. Great choice, Royce.
Twist ending.
Even though we knew who
it was obvious who it is, but you didn't know which game it was.
This
See
is
what
true.
I did there?
This is true. All right.
Okay.
Nick Gallo.
Mine is 9 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 steals.
Wait a minute. This is from the last game?
It is from the
I
last
feel like
game.
this is SGA.
It is SGA.
That's Shea.
And that's just because I was really kind of tracking, is he going to get a triple-double?
Yeah.
That's the main reason I knew that.
Well, and, the reason that I picked this out is this has been probably one of the tougher stretches of Shea's career the last week or two. But you wouldn't notice it from the way that he's impacting the game in other ways. And the fact that he was able to still get his playmaking involved, the fact that he was like Johnny on the spot on a few of those steals, just like being in the right place at the right time and like ready to pick up those balls and go, was really, really like huge for me, just in terms of watching his energy and watching his leadership on the floor, of like not only being energized by his own scoring and energized if those sidestep threes are going in. Like those have not been there for Shea during this homestand, really. The sidestep threes, the emphatic ones that he's, feeling it as he's strutting back down the court, but he's still been in it with the guys each night out.
I mean, and to make a point about the step backs and the side steps, like sometimes it kind of feel like, oh man, kind of leaning on that a little bit too much there, SGA, like get to the basket. I will say though, that I think that shot is really important, not just for Shea, but I think it's going to be really important for the Thunder over the long term.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is a late clock, late game shot. We've already seen it in a few spots this season where, it's not a game winner, but it's a game sealer. It's a dagger. We've seen it from so many other players around the league that have developed that kind of shot. And, when offensive possessions become very difficult and opposing defenses are dug in on you and it's final 3 minutes of a game, and if you have the ability to have a player that can generate that late clock, that's huge. So, you might have to endure some kind of quote unquote bad ones right now where you're like, I kind of would have loved to have seen you attack right there. But that's just kind of part of this process. That's part of this development that you have to rep that. Like you have to continue to do it. I mean, sure, I think there were last night against the Rockets a few very obvious ones where it's like, that wasn't the best choice.
Right.
But I mean, for me, I see it more as a developmental tool of, but you need to practice it and practice it in the game setting. So I don't have a big issue with it.
Just to jump in real quick, he's top 10 in unassisted made field goals, top 3 in unassisted made 3-pointers this year. And if you look at the list of like the top 10 guys in both of those categories, it's all the guys that are threatening to either win the MVP or, lead a team to a championship. Those are all like contending guys. And the fact of the matter is the Thunder is going to try to play to this offensive identity, and it will for 16 seconds of the shot clock or 18 seconds of the shot clock. But in the final 6 seconds, you got to have somebody that can do this.
When it all breaks down on you. And plus, I think, the more Shea works this, and I think we saw it in a game. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. It was during this homestand. We saw just kind of a hint of it, maybe a teaser of it, that there is kind of a counter move that I think Shea is working to kind of like, because, opposing defenses are kind of anticipating the side steps. They watch film. They know it's coming.
Yep.
And so they kind of see him on the right wing, and he's got the ball in his right hand. And, for him to kind of develop something that kind of counteracts that to where, you can't be totally sure about like what he's going to choose to do, I think is really important too. Every
player like Shea needs that you can't guard me move. That's that's the one. That's the one. And the other thing I will add, just while he did have a very balanced night in terms of, getting on the glass, assists and getting on the defensive end, offensively in that second quarter, he still had that spurt where 3 straight layups on the left-handed side. And how much did that do for the Thunder in terms of building momentum? So
Good
it's
point.
like, it's not like it has to be a full prolonged kind of, streak, an entire quarter. But even those little spurts from Shea can really spark something in
Yeah.
terms of momentum.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
this
a lot of
group.
times when you just need offense,
Yeah.
I mean, that's where people are just going to naturally look. It's like, hey, that guy's really good. Can you give us some of that
Right.
offense,
Right.
please?
Right.
Right.
Well, sometimes it's like football. Like you may be a pass heavy team, but if you gash the defense on draws like 3 straight
Right.
plays,
Right.
like all of a sudden, wait, now they got to think about this other thing
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. All right, last one. Potentially the best one. We'll see. It's fine. I'll let you guys be the deciding factor on that one. All right. 11 points. 11 for 12. Or, yeah, sorry. Nope. 2 for 12 from the field. 0 for 5 from 3. I'll give you a hint. This was not a Thunder.
I was going to
stat.
say, this has got to
I'm
be a
guessing this is
Houston
an
Rockets
opposing
player.
player.
It's got to be a Houston Rockets player.
I'm guessing this
Does
is
it
an
have to be a
opposing-
Houston Rockets player?
Oh, is this like a collection of players? Is this the entire team in a certain quarter?
Oh, there we go.
Wow.
There we go.
I feel like this is an unfair test question
It is.
right here.
It is. It is.
Okay, hit
I'm
us
just going
with
to
it.
tell you. I'm just going to
Yeah,
tell you. This was the Houston Rockets offense in the final 8 minutes of the game.
Okay.
And I have to
Nice.
give all the credit to Chris Josephson, our stat guru for this one, because he brought this up for us. And I wanted to point this one out because we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Thunder's defense.
Yeah.
Over these past 4 games especially, and the way it has dug in its heels. It held Houston to under 90 points, and this was after Houston scored over 120 the last time that they played them. They really couldn't turn the faucet off. That's another Mark Dagnall euphemism right there.
Yeah,
Couldn't
way to
turn
go.
the faucet off.
We should just start trying to work them in and just see. It could be kind of like a bingo card type thing. See who picks up on it.
But I wanted to point out the defense because this is an area where the Thunder has shown significant strides of improvement.
Yeah, and you just look at some of the numbers, like the Thunder is above average in defensive rating and all sorts of categories that like right in the middle of the pack in terms of points allowed, top 10 in defensive field goal percentage. So this is being drilled into the team, and it's something that they are obviously clearly focused on. And you just see it in like the energy, the effort, the getting back in transition. For the last 2 years now under Mark Dagnall, they've been the best transition defense team in the league.
You know, I was just looking, Nick, just because I was curious what the updated numbers had. Thunder currently are 12th in defensive rating, and they allow 105.9 points per 100 possessions. Again, number 12 in the league. Like, that is exceeding every expectation.
Right.
Anybody. I mean, I think just to put that in context, somebody might say, oh, number 12, that's, okay. Like, that is fantastic for a team with a starting, like, with their rotation with players 23 and under right now.
Yeah.
I mean, to be playing this many rookies, this many young players, and to have a defensive rating that good, that is stunning to have that good of a defensive rating.
Teams this young are
No,
in the
that's
they're
the
in the
number one
bottom.
thing-
They're in the bottom
That's
5
the
of
number one thing
both
you're
offense
trying to
and
figure
defensive
out.
categories.
Yeah, you're trying to figure out how to like, okay, like maybe we'll figure out the defensive thing someday.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a huge running head start.
And it goes to discipline, but it also part of this too, I want to point out, and I just had this thought last night, especially when the Thunder was trying to get some offensive rhythm going. It started on the defensive end for them.
Right.
When you get those stops, you get a steal, and you get some of those high energy defensive plays, and you're able to burst out on offense and you get an easy bucket on the other end. That's all the more incentive to do it again on the defensive end. And so being locked in, having sharp rotation, sharp coverage, and being really communicative on that end of the floor, it's going to pay off on the other end of the floor.
That's a good point. I think that because I do think that a lot of the future within the offense of this team is to play fast. And, you talk about, opposing teams will talk often about the hardest thing to guard is random basketball because, we can't scout that. You can scout all the sets that they run and all the everything else, but you can't really plan for Josh Giddey coming at you downhill in transition necessarily and driving and finding just an open shooter. So, the more you pile up those types of stops, I think it kind of presents you the ability to play fast and play loose and play in transition. And for me, with all the versatility and the ball handling that this group has got,
Right.
playing with tempo, I think it should be a big focus for them going forward.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to take a short break here and we'll be right back after this.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at CoopAleWorks.com.
We have come to that point in the podcast that we all love. It is time to bless your timeline. The Thunder blessed all of our timeline by kicking off their annual Holiday Assist initiative this past Friday. They went out and they were just passing out turkeys and holiday meals, some pies to over 400 local families in need. This was the first time really that this group has been able to get out into the community in person. Last season, obviously the pandemic put a halt on all, in-person events for any NBA player really. And so this was the first opportunity for this group to get out and meet some of the members of their community face to face.
You could tell just how special it was for these players. I mean, there was a level of just energy happening at that event. We were over there on Northeast 23rd Street, and families were driving their cars through this little drive-through line, and the players were rushing over to figure out where to put the bags in, and
backseat or trunk.
I remember there was one family who had a hatchback, and the old school way that kids would sit in the back. Do you ever sit
are you talking about where you sit sideways?
Where you sit facing the rear. Anyway, so the players went to put the bags in. They're like, oh shoot, there's kids in here. This is amazing.
Parents had a car like that. That was always awesome.
Yeah,
when I was a kid.
So it was a good time. It was cool. Yeah,
every player that was there, they were enjoying it. They were having a good time. Yes, they were out in the community and helping people in need. But boy, They were having a ball. Kenrich Williams brought his daughter.
Yeah, that was sweet.
She stole the show, and then Darius Baisley stole the show.
If you haven't seen the video of Darius drumming, I highly encourage you. I think it's on the Thunder Instagram account.
It is. Yeah. It is.
And not only is he's having a good time drumming, and then Darius kind of starts to feel it a little bit.
Yeah. I was like, wait a second, has he done this?
He kind of gets the hips into it,
yeah.
and then I mean, I kind of want Gallo to get up and dance like that.
Not gonna happen.
It literally cracked me up. I mean, I watched it a couple times just because the way it escalated over time as Darius started to feel it a little bit more and more.
The crazy part about this was, so the Thunder drummers were there. They were there the whole time. All the Thunder entertainers. Rumble was there, acting crazy, and then the Storm Chasers, Thunder Girls were there. And the Thunder drummers were kind of behind the tent where all the food was being set out. So we couldn't see anything that we just heard all of a sudden, and somebody came over and was like, Darius is on the drums. And so we just kind of ran around.
So I didn't hear any of that. I heard the drumming, obviously, but I didn't hear what the cause of the commotion was. And 30 people go rushing around this corner. We're on a busy street. I'm like, oh God, what happened? Was there?
Did Darius play drums?
I don't know.
No.
It kind of seemed like he knew what he was doing.
It very much seemed
like he was in rhythm and I don't know, just I kind of had to ask myself, was he a drummer or something? Because it seemed like he had an idea of how to do that.
He and Sam Presti must have bonded over that in the pre-draft process.
That's probably exactly why he got picked.
Just happens naturally for some people,
exactly. I guess just got rhythm,
Okay, so that wasn't the only thing that blessed our timeline, though. Nick Gallo, you have been able to cover a really, really heartwarming story, and that's a Make-A-Wish story.
That's right. So 16-year-old Zonder Brayfield, he is a student at Norman North High School. For the last 2 years, obviously partially because of the pandemic, but also because of his own health situation. He had blastoma, stage 4 blastoma. He's now in remission, but through Make-A-Wish, he asked for season tickets to Thunder games. And so now he's finally back in school. He's been an honor roll student this entire time over the last 2 years that he has been out of school doing remote learning. And despite going through every single type of surgery and experimental treatment and everything that you can imagine, he has maintained his grades. He's maintained a really positive, great attitude. And so a couple weeks ago, we were able to get down to Norman North, and I got Lou Dort on the phone on FaceTime, and we rushed into his classroom. Thunder Girls, some Thunder Entertainers, Storm Chasers were all there. And right in the middle of history class, we burst in and hand him the phone, and Lou gets to explain that Make-A-Wish and the Thunder have made his wish come true, and that he and his family are going to have 4 seats in the lower bowl to Thunder games for the rest of the season.
And I saw the first game that he was at. He was kind of sitting baseline. He sat down there and watched the team warm up, and it was just really cool. I mean, you've seen players do this throughout the years, but I think that this group is kind of unique in that how invested they are. And each player, whether it was Josh Giddey, I saw SGA talk to him, obviously Lou, Darius, they all went over and they spent like extended time with them.
Yeah.
And like, this is like pregame, like they're in their warm-up routine, and
Right.
you know, you take time to go sit down and talk and laugh and joke and take selfies and stuff. I mean, it's always a cool thing. And I think for people out there, like, you can never be cynical about this. It's like, it is a cool gesture for these NBA players to do this sort of thing. And it always kind of brings a smile to my face.
And think of all the cool stuff he's been able to see since
Yeah.
he's gotten those season tickets. My goodness.
Well, his favorite player is Lou Dort, which is why he was presented with a Dort jersey, why Lou called him up on FaceTime. And the very first game that he got to go to with these season tickets was Lou's steal and score against Sacramento. And then to cap the homestand was the emphatic putback dunk against Houston to really slam the door and seal the game.
Man, so like, so Zonder is to thank for Lou's breakout. I think
that's right.
All the pieces fit right now.
Yeah.
Is what it sounds like.
It's the Make-A-Wish streak.
There it is. There it is.
Gonna have to take him on the road.
That's right.
That's gonna be what's gonna happen.
If you want to see any more, pictures and coverage on this, be sure to follow Thunder Cares on Instagram and Twitter. Got a lot of photos of Zonder sitting next to Lou, and also you'll be able to see that video of Darius Baisley going on the drum, showing off his skills.
Check that out for sure.
Be sure to go check that out. All right, before we let you go, got to let you know what's on tap. The team has concluded their 4-game homestand, and now they are about to head off on a 3-game road trip through the Eastern Conference. That is going to start in Milwaukee. It's actually an interesting back-to-back. Milwaukee and Boston. Going to be in Milwaukee on Friday, Boston on Saturday. Going to close things out with Atlanta on Monday.
Royce, what are you thinking about this upcoming road trip? This is a totally different level of test that the Thunder's going to have to face.
I mean, I think that this is going to be a great experience for this group. You know, they saw the Bucks in preseason, and in a lot of ways they looked overwhelmed in that game. Yeah. And I think it'll be a great kind of progress check on maybe where they've kind of come since seeing them. The Bucks have gotten off to kind of a little bit of a slow start, but that's not all that surprising for a defending champion. Sometimes they can be a little sleepy, but they've really come on. I mean, Giannis just erupted, and I think he had 47 against the Lakers. So that's going to be a great test for this group. I think it'll be a great test just kind of individually for a lot of different guys to get to experience guarding Giannis and guarding the Bucks and the physicality that they play with. So this whole Eastern Conference road trip, I think, will be some pretty good kind of developmental checkpoints for this group to go through.
One guy to just keep your eyes on is Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. In the first meeting in the preseason against the Bucks, Mark Daigneault said he just kind of looked small out there. And over the last couple of weeks, that has not been the case. He had 8 and 9 last night against Christian Wood and held his own and defensively in that matchup. If you remember, Christian Wood went for 31 the first time that these teams met, and he had a very subpar scoring game, just barely eclipsed double figures in the rematch between the Thunder and Rockets. And a lot of that had to do with JRE just kind of holding his own and playing bigger and playing more physically, as Mark Daigneault said.
Yeah, I mean, and the Bucks got guys that will make anybody look small with some of the size and the length and the physicality they play with. So, yeah, I think that's a great point. And JRE, I think, has really come a long way just in kind of understanding how to play big. When maybe you're not necessarily your traditional 7-footer playing the 5, but you can still play like one with the kind of approach that you take.
Got a lot to look forward to. Be sure to stay tuned on OKCThunder.com for all pre- and post-game coverage. Be sure to tune into Bally Sports Oklahoma. We'll have the broadcast for you there. That game is going to be on Friday in Milwaukee. We are going to have our next podcast on Tuesday. It's going to be our pre-Thanksgiving show. Get your forks and knives ready. Got a lot of good stuff coming your way. We're eating over here in the TBU crew.
Dish out some delicious takes for you.
That's right. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Thank you so much to our producer, Matt Bishop, and to our guest, Royce Young. And until next time, Thunder up, and catch you later.